Our next guest is Pennsylvania Republican U.S. Senate candidate David Christian, an attorney and veterans advocate from Bucks County. Christian is a highly decorated Vietnam War veteran who has a Purple Heart. David Christian, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you very much, Adam and Bob.
Hi, Dave. It's Bob Guzzardi. Before you talk, let me tell the audience a little bit about you. Dave Christian has a Purple Heart, a real Purple Heart, not a John Kerry Purple Heart. And those of us who are old enough to remember, and I'm a lot older than Adam, remember when people like Dave Christian were coming back from Vietnam and were insulted. We are not going to let that happen again. We thank Dave for his service in the Vietnam War. We thank him for his service continuing since then. You can go to his webpage and look at some of the information, which is all documented about the injuries that he suffered in defense of America, in defense of freedom, and he deserves our attention and our thanks for what he has done, and we're proud that Dave Christian has chosen to put himself up as a candidate for the U.S. Senate on the Republican ticket. He does a lot more for the Republican ticket than the Republicans do for him, and maybe we'll get in a little bit about the nominating process and what Dave went through there. But thank you very much, Dave, for coming on, and we know about your war record. I hope we do, so maybe you'll mention a few words about that, but also your other views on economic freedom, free markets, your business experience, things that people may not associate with you generally. And so tell us a little bit about yourself.
It's great to be with you, Bob and Adam. I'm excited. I'm a businessman, first and foremost. I have ventured into a number of arenas. Right now I have a company in Philadelphia, Cottman and Tulip Street, and I manufacture ground support equipment, putting the ground support equipment, bringing them up the elevators onto the decks of the aircraft carriers, and I load the bombs onto the aircraft that go and they bomb the bad boys in the Badlands, Afghanistan, Iraq. And
Good, terrific.
So, we're out there and we're employing people, we're putting people to work, but I can tell you that in being a businessman, if today you would take the regulations of today and you'd apply them to the turn of the century, the last century, we would not have electricity. We would not have manufacturing with Henry Ford. We would not have a whole lot of things because we're just so far overregulated. And I had the opportunity to work with Ronald Reagan, and he used to hit me on the leg and call me Kid Bob. And today no one calls me Kid, but I realized what we need. And Ronald Reagan was not the brightest man in terms of presidents I ever worked for, but he was one of the smartest presidents, if not the smartest president that I worked for, because he knew how to delegate and give people like Caspar Weinberger and the individuals that had to make decisions for the good of the country, and he gave them the reins and he let them make the decisions. He got out of the way. He wanted government out of the way, and if you remember early on in the Reagan administration, he said, stay the course. He said we were overtaxed, we were overregulated, and people were laughing at him, the media was laughing at him, but yet today, even President Barack Obama evokes the name of Ronald Reagan given speeches. Everybody. And they've made Ronald Reagan an icon, and some of your listeners out there, I'm sure, can remember the days when the media was all laughing at Ronald Reagan.
He was treated like Sarah Palin is.
Yes, you're right. You're correct.
On the subject of presidents, whom do you support for president?
That's my own personal choice. I mean, What are you doing? I'm supporting me for the U.S. Senate. Now
okay, fair enough. Good answer, Dave. That's fair.
Okay. Adam?
We should ask which presidential candidate is supporting you. So, okay, fine. No problem.
I'll take them collectively. I'll take all the I know, Newt Gingrich personally. I know I've known Newt for a number of years when he was Speaker of the House there. Newt came out to my house here in Pennsylvania. He supported me and backed me. I know the different candidates that are running here, from Santorum to Romney to whomever. However, I have to push my candidacy. I really think that one United States Senator can make a difference. We can stop things that now are being embraced and called Obamacare instead of the Affordable Health Care Act. We can start being selective and picking what is good for America And what is bad, we can throw out, but we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have to do things that are truly in the best interest of finding jobs for our nation. Because you take a job away from a human being, you have an increase in substance abuse, you have an increase in domestic relation problems, you have an increase in a number of things, and then you have a decrease in monies to fund your cities, a decrease in the monies for your infrastructure in your cities, a decrease to make things, whether it's a city or whether it's the country, town, or community you're looking at, you have a decrease in your structure there because the tax base is being lost. And we're losing that tax base because of regulations.
Dave, that's an issue. I remember speaking to you up at the gun show, and the issue of regulation is something that is usually discussed by free market Republicans, but you make such a point of it in the personal way that you understand the issue. And I think that's an almost unique issue that you are speaking about. And I don't know if you were at the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. If you get a chance, listen to Pat Toomey's Defense of Capitalism. I think it's a speech that you could give, too. And many of us would look forward to Senator Dave Christian, who would align himself with Senator Pat Toomey and make some real differences for Pennsylvania. And I would want to add one more thing about the job issue. It is not merely a matter of substance abuse and money to the economy. It's a matter of dignity. You have a job. It means that you are using your talents to produce something that other people want. That's an issue of human freedom and human dignity that we need to talk a lot more about. The younger people in this country are not having those job opportunities because of the economic decisions the president has made and, frankly, the Democrats have made. And I don't think they're decisions that a Dave Christian would make. We need a Dave Christian who is going to stand strong against the job-sucking decisions of the Democratic Party. And but I would talk about that issue of dignity because I think it's an important one, especially to the younger people. But I interrupted you. And one thing I would like to ask you, though, is... I agree,
Bob. I agree wholeheartedly. You take away from a family, whether it's family that's being supported by the mother or the father or both, you take away jobs from that family, and all of a sudden fear just grabs that family, and you lose not only dignity, but the children start seeing for the first time in their lives fear in their parents' faces. They see fear as their parents tuck them away at nighttime to make them safe. The children know something is wrong, and something's wrong right now with America. People know, and there's fear throughout America. We are not going to bed, in my eyes, we're not going to bed with Americans, hungry in terms of their stomach. But we are going to bed with Americans saturated emotionally in terms of what to do with tomorrow. Are they going to have a job tomorrow? Is there going to be a future? Is there going to be a career there tomorrow? Is something going to happen? And an education process and continuing education is the key to the future. And we have failed this country in our education process, and we failed miserably. Education keeps getting us out of one situation and move us into another situation called a JOB, and that's a job. We need jobs.
And Ronald Reagan's famous statement was, the best job training is a job. And Dave, I think what you've demonstrated in the last few minutes is what I sensed when I spoke to you at the gun show. For the listeners who have not had the honor of meeting Dave Christian personally, he is charismatic. And I think the reason for it, as I'm beginning to hear more and more, is because he has that feel. I've always felt that Sarah Palin's attraction is because she genuinely feels the pain of people who have lost their jobs, who are feeling fear. And it's evident to me that Dave Christian starts with that same emotional understanding and then translates it into a policy position of what will be best for America educationally and creating jobs. One question I would like to ask you, Dave, is I know that you have been active with Veterans Affairs, and we know that money is always an important issue in any campaign, but a network of supporters is equally important. And I was wondering if you could discuss a little bit what you have done for veterans since in the last whenever years, 20 or 30 years, and what your network of support among the military veterans organizations is?
Number one, I am the only veteran that is running for the United States Senate. I'm the only one who's put on a uniform, put on the boots, and unfortunately had to fall on the sword, and blood was dripped on foreign soil. So I understand that, but I thought I was very fortunate in coming back to America. I was machine gunned overseas. I was shot in both legs. I was stabbed in the left arm. I was paralyzed in the right hand. I had a challenge, and I had 40% of my body burnt with napalm. So it was a long challenge, a fight to come back. I'm Catholic. They gave me the last rites twice. The last guy I wanted to see was the priest, rolling out his stuff to say, I'm getting a first-class stamp to heaven. That wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for a future, and I was pulling for Dave Christian. No one was pulling for Dave Christian at that time because they thought I was going to die. I fought that challenge there, and then after that, they said, you're in an electric wheelchair. I went from an electric wheelchair to a regular wheelchair to crutches to a cane, and then I ran a 26-mile marathon. And I said, God, if you let me finish this marathon, I will never torture my body again. Huh. And in New York, I finished the marathon, and I did not run again, I'll be honest with you, Bob. But I got involved with the veterans movement. I thought that God gave me a break. I had a break in this society. I hit the lottery by being born in America, by serving such a great country. And, whether the war is controversial or whatever, I got to do something for my country, serve my neighbors. And as a result, maybe I can do that for returning veterans. At the time, we had gas prices that were going sky high because we had gas lines. We happened to have a president that was telling people to turn down the thermostat, and President Jimmy Carter. We happened to have veterans' unemployment rates in the 20s, 23%, 25%, 27%, depending what part of the country you're in. It all sounds similar to what we're hearing right now today. People could not get loans. And as a result, I went out and I realized that the U.S. Department of Labor and the Congress of the United States, they were trying to have the states fall into compliance with hiring veterans. People did not want to hire veterans because there was a stigma attached to hiring veterans. And so I went to the governor at that time, was Governor Thornburgh. We put Pennsylvania as the only state in the United States into compliance with federal regulations because we addressed some of the issues that people may have had, whether it was a disability problem, an image problem, a substance abuse problem, a domestic relations problem, whatever that problem was. As the veterans were coming back and matriculating back into society, they needed education, whatever it may have been. Those veterans today are now retiring from jobs. They've put their kids through college. They've gone on vacations. And I want to do that for all of Americans. I want to do it again for veterans. So I feel as though I have the greatest amount of support from veterans because I've been out there in the front lines working for veterans. I wrote the first Agent Orange legislation in the nation. I was investigated by different groups because when you were taking on something, I was saying that unfortunately we may have been used. The veterans may have been used as guinea pigs during the Vietnam War. No one knew what Agent Orange was. No one knew what post-traumatic stress was. And I said, well, we've had, different things it was called in different wars. Whatever we want to call it, people have some form of stress right now, and they're coming back from war. So I wrote legislation, and I convinced legislators in states like Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Texas, California, Oklahoma, and they passed the legislation, and I sat in a bipartisan Congress, and I sat there with Patrick Moynihan, John Hines, and we sat in the rotunda, and we called a press conference saying, this is what we're going to do for veterans, addressing their health issues, addressing their unemployment issues, and put them back into society. That same matrix, that same concept can be used to put all people back. There's many people losing their jobs. There's many people fearful because of regulations that they may be out of work tomorrow. We have to stop these regulations. Again, we're over-regulated. Again, we're overtaxed. Again, the bureaucracy is over-bloated. We have people that, even with your radio station, there's so many regulations for you to turn on all the signals for your radio station to start broadcasting. There's regulations for people to listen to your radio station.
Mm-hmm. Dave, one of the other things, as I listen to you now, and perhaps I should have realized a little bit before, but you've mentioned You've spoken. You knew Governor Thornburgh. You were successful in convincing him to help veterans in Pennsylvania. Senator Hines. You have been involved with the Republican Party. Ronald Reagan worked for Ronald Reagan, the iconic Republican, and yet when you were running, there was an endorsement process by the Republican State Committee, and you did not get that endorsement. I should point out, I was at the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference, and Steve Welsh, who did get the endorsement, came out very, very low in the straw poll. And that was, I think, a slam at the Republican State Committee. Could you tell us a little bit about how the Republican establishment treated you, and just a little bit of background on that, because a lot of Republicans don't know that.
There's an old saying, and sayings stay around for a reason. Sure, both Bob and Adam realize this. Your mother's told you this, that the sayings stay around because they're true. And money talks in this world. And unfortunately, people came and they had a certain amount of money they were willing to commit personally up front. So Steve Welsh, evidently said he would commit a certain amount of money. I don't know if he's committed that. And as a result, early on, he was there early with a commitment there to investing into a campaign. And you have to realize that a U.S. Senate seat does not generate a lot of jobs for a state. So the state committees throughout this, as they're looking throughout the state of Pennsylvania, for example, they're looking at 60 jobs. Well, why not put their money into the Attorney General and the Auditor General and whatever other seats out there that statewide generates a lot of jobs? Mm-hmm. Because 60 jobs, the National Republican Congressional Committee in Washington, D.C. is going to fill 30 of them in Washington, and the other 30 you may fill with friends and family. So as a result, people that are going to self-fund, they call it, they give themselves a loan, and then when they collect money from the constituents out there, they collect money from the Republican Party, they pay the loan back. I didn't have $1 million to lay on the table. And I don't think the seat is a seat that we should say, look at Illinois. You get in trouble when you talk about money and seats, and I just don't think that the seat is a situation that should deny an opportunity for someone else's son to run. Everyone's son, your son, your friend, you yourselves, both Bob and Adam. If you want to run for the United States Senate, you should be able to run for the United States Senate. Mm-hmm. And it's not how much money that you can self-fund.
And more important than that, Dave, is that when the state committee endorses, they put their thumb on the scale. The Republican voters should decide whom they want to represent themselves against Senator Casey, and not the insiders who have their own network of ideas. Dave Christian versus Bob Casey, in my opinion, is a far better candidate than a Steve Welsh against Bob Casey. I can almost picture the Dave Christian Bob Casey debate, and if anybody walks away from that other than a hardcore leftist with no heart, not wanting to support you, I would find that surprising. Dave Christian versus Bob Casey is a far superior matchup than a Steve Welsh versus a Bob Casey. And I think the Republican voters should decide whom they want. And if Dave Christian is the guy, then let's vote for him. Let his story get out there. That's what we're trying to do, Dave. Let people know who you are. The Republican voters know who you are. And frankly, I love the line where you won the lottery by being born in America. Adam and I won that lottery too. A lot of the people do not appreciate how lucky we are. It was a lucky break. Mm-hmm. And when I hear this, I just it's just terrific, Dave. It's really great to hear from you.
Wonderful. And you know what you're pointing out here, the difference with Dave Christian versus Bob Casey is Dave Christian's going to win. You let your listeners go to davechristian.com. They go to davechristian.com. Your listeners, I say, send $20.12 this year. Everybody sends $20.12. I'm not looking for millions of dollars. But your listeners send $20.12. We're going to win this election.
I think a Dave Christian can beat Bob Casey, and I like that. You don't need millions of dollars, Dave. What you need is enough money to get your message out. I think Republicans have an obligation to let other Republicans know who the candidates are. We're doing as objective a job as we can. And, I've said this over and over again. I like Sam Rohrer. He's a good guy. I'm a Tom Smith guy for my own reasons. but I think that a Dave Christian would be a great candidate against Bob Casey and could well win. In fact, I would predict he will win. I just really think when people get to know you,
my attorney had to defend me because the state challenged my petitions.
That is a disgrace.
And anybody can challenge petitions if you want to, and it's a sad waste of taxpayers' money because we have to tie up the courts, the Commonwealth courts. We have to go in there. We have to look at signatures. We have to do different things. For example, I had a woman whose signature changed, and they found out that she had a stroke. Well, I guess your signature would change. Someone registered in 1960, and today their signature is a little bit different. Guess what, Bob and Adam? Your signatures would be different probably in the course of a year, let alone.
Absolutely. This was a total disgrace. And by the way, you did win.
We won in court. We won in court. We're going to be on the ballot. We're number one on the ballot. You'll see Dave Christian, number one on the ballot there. We are going to win, and we're going to win here in April 24th. We're going to win in November, and we are going to help the state of Pennsylvania. We have to realize that no Democrat has won the White House in the last 50-plus years without winning the state of Pennsylvania. And that's what we have to be looking at. The big prize is protecting the White House. If we send President Obama back to the White House for another term, we have dropped the ball. And we have $4 a gallon that's going to $5 a gallon gas. We have people debating whether they should buy a loaf of bread or get a gallon of gas. When we have these issues going on in our society, we have failed our society.
You're right, Dave. We have to wrap this up. All the best to you, and you make an excellent point about the candidate. The senatorial candidate will excite the Republican base in November. So it's very important to pick a Dave Christian candidate who will excite the base and help the president, the Republican presidential candidate, get elected. Dave, we have to cut you off. Say thank you very much for your time,
and thanks for your service, also, Dave.
Well, thank both you gentlemen. Thank you for letting me follow David Horowitz on, and I feel honored to be on your show, and when I go into Washington, D.C., hopefully you guys are there to cover the swearing in.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We have another minute or so. Any thoughts about today's program, what David Horowitz said, or things that come to mind?
This is the only problem with the program today. It wasn't long enough. Dave Christian, I followed his career. I've looked at his website. What he presented today, I think you get a feel for the guy. And when you start to, as the black people say, feel me, you feel that he is like a Sarah Palin. He really cares. And there's an old line in the business community: before they care what you know, they have to know you care. And Dave Christian cares. You can tell it. And a matchup between him and Bob Casey, Dave Christian, if you meet him, if you have the opportunity to meet him, you will see he has charisma.
He doesn't sound like he'd back down at all. Not that Casey's that aggressive.
Dave Christian on the same stage with the Bob Casey, you won't even remember that Casey is there. Casey has zero charisma. It'll be lopsided debate just because one knows what he's talking about and speaks from the heart. When he talks about fear in children, this is something no other candidate has talked about. He understands the impact of losing a job, and I really was very impressed and proud to be a Republican for